The instructor told him to relax. He did 100 more push-ups, part 1. The selection, the Galactic Coalition's joint training academy, floated in the cold darkness of space. A massive station built from metal and glass in the hopes of 100 different species. For 300 years, the academy had trained the best soldiers from every corner of the galaxy. Warriors came here to learn, to grow, and to prove themselves worthy of protecting the coalition. The academy had seen all kinds of beings walk through its doors. The Vellani were tall and graceful, with 4 arms and skin the color of pale silver. They moved like dancers and could fight with all 4 hands at once. The Droth were the opposite, short and wide, with skin like gray stone that could stop a blade. They were slow but almost impossible to hurt. The Mirians were small and quiet, with large dark eyes and the ability to read minds. Every species had something special, but none of them had ever seen humans before. The first human ship arrived on a cold morning in the station's artificial day cycle. Park Taiho stepped off the transport with 19 other humans, all of them wearing simple gray uniforms. He was 26 years old, average height, with short black hair and a face that showed nothing. He did not smile. He did not frown. He simply walked forward and waited for instructions. Senior Instructor Vel watched the humans line up with the other new cadets. Vel was a Droth who had trained warriors for 40 cycles. He had seen brave soldiers and cowardly ones, geniuses and fools. He thought he understood what made a good fighter. Looking at the soft-skinned humans, he felt something close to pity. They seemed so fragile, so breakable. "New cadets," Vel announced, his voice like rocks grinding together. "Today we begin with physical assessment. I will learn what your bodies can do. You will show me your limits." The cadets spread out across the training hall, a huge open space with floors that could change from soft to hard, from flat to mountainous, depending on what the instructors needed. Today, the floor was simple and flat. "Push-ups first," Vel commanded. "Begin on my signal. Continue until you cannot continue. This is not a competition. This is measurement. I need to know where each of you starts so I can track your improvement." The cadets dropped to the ground. Taiho placed his hands on the cold floor, his body straight as a board. Beside him, a Vellani cadet named Pren did the same, using 2 of her 4 arms. "Begin." Taiho pushed up and down in a steady rhythm. His breathing was controlled and even. He had done this exercise 10,000 times before, maybe more. In Korea, in the mountains, in the rain and snow and burning summer heat. Push-ups were like breathing to him. Around him, cadets began to fail. At 20 push-ups, some of the weaker species stopped. At 30, more dropped out. At 50, the Vellani cadets, built for speed and flexibility, not raw strength, finally gave up. Pren collapsed beside Taiho, her 4 arms shaking. Taiho kept going. At 70 push-ups, Instructor Vel began to pay attention. The human had not slowed down. His form was still perfect. His breathing was still steady. At 100 push-ups, Vel raised his massive stone hand. "Human, you may relax now." Taiho heard the words. He understood them, but his arms kept moving. 101, he counted quietly. 102, 103. Vel's stone face cracked with something that might have been confusion. In 40 cycles of training, no cadet had ever ignored his command to stop. He did not know if this was bravery or stupidity or something else entirely. "Human," he said again, louder this time. I said relax. "The assessment is complete. 115, 116, 117. The other cadets had stopped to watch. A young Marian named Sorel reached out with her mind, trying to understand what was happening inside the human's head. She expected to find defiance or anger or a desire to show off. Instead, she found something she had never felt before, a quiet, burning determination that seemed to have no end. It was like staring into a fire that would never go out. Yuna, another human from Taiho's unit, stood at attention nearby. She was not surprised. She had served with Taiho for 3 years. She had seen him run until his feet bled, then bandage them and run more. She had seen him carry wounded soldiers through enemy territory for 16 hours without rest. She knew what he was taught at 150 push-ups. Some of the Droth cadets began to murmur among themselves. Their species was known for endurance, for the ability to keep fighting long after others had fallen. But even they had limits. This human seemed to have none. Taiho reached 200 push-ups. Then, and only then, he stopped. He pushed himself to his feet in one smooth motion and returned to his place in formation. His arms were not shaking. His breath was only slightly faster than before. The training hall was completely silent. Instructor Vel walked slowly toward the human, his heavy footsteps echoing in the quiet. He stopped directly in front of Taiho and looked down at him. Vel was twice the human size, built like a mountain, but somehow the small, soft creature in front of him did not seem afraid. "Why did you not stop when I commanded?" Vel asked. Taiho met his eyes without hesitation. "I was not tired yet, Instructor. The assessment was complete. I had the measurement I needed." "Yes, Instructor." "Then why continue?" Taiho was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain something that seemed so obvious to him. "In my country," he said finally, "we have a belief. The body will always quit before the mind. If you listen to your body, you will never know what you are truly capable of. 200 push-ups is not my limit. It is simply where I chose to stop today." Vel stared at the human for a long time. He had trained warriors from species that could lift 10 times their body weight, species that could run for days without rest, species that felt no pain. But he had never trained anyone who simply did not believe in limits. "Return to formation," Vel said finally. "Yes, Instructor." As Taiho walked back to his place, Vel made a note in his file. It said only 3 words. Watch this one. That night, in the barracks, the other cadets talked about what they had seen. Some thought the human was crazy. Some thought he was showing off. Some thought he was too stupid to follow simple orders. But Sorel, the young Mirian who had touched his mind, knew the truth. She had felt what burned inside Park Tae-ho. It was not madness. It was not pride. It was something far more dangerous. It was a will that simply did not know how to break. The instructor told him to relax. He did 100 more push-ups. Part 2. The misunderstanding word spread through the academy like fire through dry grass. By the next morning, everyone knew about the human who would not stop. Cadets from every species whispered about him in the hallways. Some called him brave. Some called him foolish. Most simply called him strange. Instructor Kavi heard the stories and decided she needed to understand. Kavi was a Villani, tall and graceful, with 4 arms and eyes that could see things other beings missed. She worked in psychological evaluation, studying the minds of cadets to make sure they were stable enough for combat. When she read Taiho's file, she marked him as a potential problem. A soldier who could not follow simple orders was dangerous to himself and others. She scheduled a private meeting with him for the 3rd day. But on the 2nd night, she found him first. The station's day cycle had ended hours ago. The lights in the corridors had dimmed to simulate night, and most cadets were sleeping in their barracks. Kavi was walking to her quarters when she heard footsteps, steady, rhythmic footsteps, echoing from the training hall. She changed direction and followed the sound. The training hall was dark except for emergency lighting along the walls. In that dim glow, she saw a single figure running laps around the massive room. Park Tae-ho moved with mechanical precision, his feet hitting the floor in exactly the same interval every time. He had been running for at least an hour, based on the sweat soaking through his shirt. "Cadet Park," Kavi called out. Taiho slowed to a stop and turned to face her. He was breathing hard but not gasping. His body was tired, but his eyes were alert. "Instructor," he said, bowing his head slightly. "You were not assigned night training." "No." "Instructor." Kavi walked closer, studying him with all four of her eyes. His body language showed no guilt, no nervousness. He did not act like someone who had been caught doing something wrong. "Then why are you here?" she asked. "You should be resting. Tomorrow's training will be difficult." Taiho wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. "This is when I train," he said simply. "Back home, my unit always ran before dawn. The mountains were quiet then. Cool. It was the best time to push yourself. But you are not in the mountains now. You are on a space station, following academy schedules." "Yes, instructor. But my body does not know that. It wakes up at this time expecting to run. So I run." Kavi was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Her preliminary assessment had flagged Taiho as defiant, possibly unstable. But standing here in the dark training hall, watching this tired young man explain himself, she began to wonder if she had been wrong. "During the physical assessment," she said carefully, "you ignored Instructor Vel's command to stop. Many have interpreted this as defiance. Disrespect for authority." Taiho shook his head. "It was not defiance, instructor. I meant no disrespect." "Then explain it to me. Help me understand." He thought for a moment, searching for the right words. "In Korea, we have a concept called jangsen. It is difficult to translate. It means spirit, but also willpower. The belief that your mind is stronger than your body. That if you decide not to quit, your body cannot make you. Your body has physical limits," Kavi pointed out. "Muscles fail. Bones break. Blood runs out. Yes, but those limits are further than most people think. Much further. When Instructor Vel told me to stop, my body was not at its limit. My muscles were not failing. So stopping felt wrong. It felt like giving up when I did not need to give up." Kavi studied his face, looking for signs of deception or madness. She found neither. The human believed what he was saying. More than that, he had built his entire life around this belief. "You do not train because you are ordered to," she said slowly, finally understanding. "You train because you cannot accept the idea of stopping." "Yes, instructor. Even when there is no purpose? Even when no one is watching?" Taiho almost smiled. "Especially when no one is watching. That is when training matters most. Anyone can push themselves when others are looking. The real test is what you do when you are alone." Kavi returned to her quarters that night with much to think about. She rewrote her assessment completely. The human was not defiant. He was not unstable. He was simply operating on a different set of rules than the academy understood. The next morning, she requested a meeting with Yuna, the other Korean human in Taiho's unit. They met in Kavi's office, a small room filled with screens and data files. "Tell me about jangsen," Kavi said. "Tell me about human willpower." Yuna sat straight in her chair, her hands folded in her lap. She was smaller than Taiho, with a softer face, but her eyes held the same quiet fire. "It is difficult to explain to other species," Yuna said. "Humans are not the strongest beings. We are not the fastest or the toughest. Our bodies are soft. We break easily. But we learned long ago that the mind can push the body past what seems possible. How far past? Very far. There are stories of humans lifting vehicles to save trapped children, running hundreds of kilometers without sleep, surviving wounds that should have killed them simply because they decided they were not ready to die. Kavi leaned forward. And Taiho? Is he unusual, even among humans? Yuna was quiet for a moment. Taiho is special, she said finally. I have served with him for 3 years. I have seen him do things that frightened me. Not because they were violent, but because they should have been impossible. He does not seem to feel limits the way other people do. When his body tells him to stop, he simply does not listen. Is that not dangerous? Very dangerous. He has been hospitalized many times. He has pushed himself until his muscles tore and his bones cracked. But he always heals, and then he pushes again. Yuna paused. Among Korean soldiers, there is a saying, do not stand between Park Tae-ho and his mission. You will not move him. You will only get hurt trying. That evening, Kavi submitted her new report to Admiral Torek, the station commander. She wrote, human psychology operates on principles the coalition does not fully understand. They have developed mental techniques to override physical limitations, not through genetic modification or technology, but through pure force of will. Cadet Park Tae-ho appears to be an extreme example of this trait. Recommendation: do not attempt to train these humans using standard methods. They do not respond to limits the way other species do. Instead, give them goals and stand back. They will find their own way to achieve them, no matter the cost. Additional note: I believe we have seriously underestimated this species. Their soft bodies and short lifespans made us assume they were weak. This was a mistake. The humans are not weak. They have simply learned to be strong in a different way. She filed the report and sat alone in her office, thinking about the young man running laps in the dark. She had met warriors from 100 species. She had never met anyone quite like him, and she suspected the Academy would never be the same now that the humans had arrived. The instructor told him to relax. He did 100 more push-ups, part 3. The test 6 months passed. The human cadets trained alongside aliens from across the galaxy, and slowly the whispers changed. At first, the other species had watched the humans with curiosity and doubt. Now they watched with something closer to respect. Tae-ho had not become stronger in those 6 months. His body was still soft compared to the Droth, still slow compared to the Vellani. But he had proven something that physical tests could not measure. He had proven that he would never ever quit. In combat simulations, he fought until the instructors had to physically remove him. In endurance tests, he ran until he collapsed, and then tried to keep running while lying on the ground. The other cadets stopped laughing at the humans. Some even started training with them, hoping to learn whatever secret burned inside their fragile bodies. Then the emergency came. It started with a distress signal in the middle of the night. A coalition supply vessel called the Harmony's Grace had been attacked by pirates in a far sector of space. The pirates had boarded the ship, taken hostages, and were demanding ransom. If the money did not arrive in 12 hours, they would begin killing prisoners. Admiral Torek called an emergency meeting. He was a large Droth with scars across his stone face marks from battles fought long before any of the cadets were born. He stood before a holographic map showing the location of the captured ship. Our nearest professional extraction team is 3 days away, he announced. The pirates have given us 12 hours. If we do not act, 47 innocent beings will die. The room was silent. Everyone understood what that meant. There was no one close enough to help, except the Academy. Tarek turned to face the senior instructors. I am making a difficult decision. I am sending our senior cadets on a real mission. This is not a simulation. This is not a test. People will die if they fail. Instructor Vel stepped forward. Admiral, with respect, the cadets are not ready. They have only trained for 6 months. I know, but we have no other choice. Torek looked across the room at the assembled cadets. I need volunteers. 6 soldiers to board the Harmony's Grace, eliminate the pirates, and rescue the hostages. This will be extremely dangerous. Some of you may not return. Taiho stepped forward immediately. He did not hesitate for even a second. Yuna stepped forward next, taking her place beside him. Sorel, the young Mirian with the large dark eyes, came forward after a moment of thought. Her telepathy could help them locate hostages and enemies. Goreth, a Droth cadet built like a small mountain, joined the group. His stone skin would provide some protection against enemy weapons. Finally, 2 Vellani cadets stepped forward, Pren and Lissa. They were fast and could fight with all 4 arms. 6 volunteers, Torek said. Bak Taiho, you will lead. Instructor Vel will observe from the shuttle, but cannot intervene unless the mission completely fails. You will be on your own in there. Taiho nodded. His face showed no fear. Understood, Admiral. 2 hours later, they were on a shuttle racing through space toward the captured ship. The flight was quiet. Each cadet dealt with their fear in their own way. Lissa prayed to gods Taiho had never heard of. Gorath sharpened his blade over and over, the sound of stone on metal filling the small cabin. Sorel sat with her eyes closed, practicing her telepathy. Pren checked her weapons again and again. Yuna sat beside Taiho in the back of the shuttle. She spoke in Korean so the others would not understand. Are you afraid? Taiho thought about the question. No, he said finally. I do not have time to be afraid. Fear does not help the mission. You always say that, because it is always true. The shuttle dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the Harmony's Grace. On the screens, they could see the ship, a large cargo vessel with blast marks along its hull. The pirate's smaller ship was attached to it like a parasite. Approaching quietly, Instructor Vel announced from the pilot's seat, "We will dock at the rear cargo bay. According to our information, the pirates are holding hostages in the main corridor near the bridge." How many pirates? Taiho asked. Intelligence says 20 to 25. Taiho did the math in his head. 6 cadets against at least 20 pirates. Bad odds, but not impossible. The shuttle slipped through space, using debris from the battle to hide its approach. They were almost at the cargo bay doors when an alarm blared through the speakers. They have detected us, Vel said. Weapons fire incoming. The shuttle shook as plasma bolts struck its hull. Warning lights flashed red. Taiho grabbed the handle on the ceiling as the ship spun, dodging the attack. We have to land now, Vel shouted. Hold on. The shuttle crashed through the cargo bay doors instead of docking normally. Metal screamed against metal. The ship bounced twice on the floor of the cargo bay before sliding to a stop against the wall. For a moment, everything was silent. Then Gorath groaned. Taiho looked over to see the big Droth pressing a hand against his leg. Shrapnel from the crash had cut through his stone skin, something that should have been almost impossible. Dark blood seeped between his fingers. I can still fight, Gorath growled. Pren was holding her arm against her chest. It bent at a wrong angle. My arm is broken. I cannot use my weapons properly. Taiho assessed the situation quickly. Their communication relay had been destroyed in the crash. They could not call for help. 2 of their 6 soldiers were injured. And somewhere in this ship, pirates were now looking for them. Sorel closed her large eyes and reached out with her mind. After a moment, she spoke in a shaking voice. The hostages are scared. Some are hurt. The pirates know we are here. They are coming. How many pirates? Sorel concentrated harder. More than Intelligence said. I sense at least 35 minds. Maybe 40. Lissa made a sound of despair. We should retreat. Wait for the professionals. This is suicide. Yuna shook her head. The hostages will be dead before help arrives. We have to try. Everyone looked at Taiho. He had already removed his cadet insignia and was checking his rifle. His face was calm, focused, as if this were just another training exercise. Garth, Pren, let's stay here. Secure our exit point. When we return with the hostages, we will need a clear path to the shuttle. And if you do not return? Lissa asked quietly. Taiho met her eyes. Then do what you can for the hostages when they kill us and drop their guard. He turned to Sorel and Yuna. You two are with me. Sorel, I need you to tell me where every enemy is. Yuna, you watch our backs. We move fast and quiet. If we have to fight, we make it quick. Yuna loaded her rifle. Like the training exercises? Taiho almost smiled. Exactly like the training exercises. Except this time, the enemies do not get back up. They moved out of the cargo bay and into the dark corridors of the Harmony's Grace. The ship was damaged and losing power. Emergency lights flickered. Smoke drifted through the air. Somewhere in the distance, they could hear pirates shouting. Searching Sorel guided them with her telepathy, pointing out enemies before they could see them. Taiho moved like a shadow, appearing behind pirates and eliminating them before they could make a sound. Yuna followed, her rifle ready, her eyes watching every dark corner. 40 minutes later, they reached the hostages. The prisoners were held in a large storage room near the bridge. When Taiho opened the door, he found 47 terrified faces looking back at him. Coalition citizens from a dozen different species, all bound and helpless. We are here to rescue you, Taiho said quietly. Stay calm. Stay quiet. We are getting you out. They had freed half the hostages when the alarm sounded. The pirates had found the bodies. And now every single one of them was heading straight for this room. The instructor told him to relax. He did 100 more push-ups, part 4. The price. The alarm screamed through the ship like the howl of an angry beast. Red lights flashed in the corridor. Heavy footsteps echoed from every direction as pirates rushed toward the hostage room. Taiho moved without hesitation. He finished cutting the last hostages free while Yuna and Sorel watched the doors. How many? He asked. Sorel's face was pale, her large eyes wide with fear. All of them. Every pirate on the ship is coming. 30 or more. A Valani woman among the hostages grabbed Taiho's arm. We cannot fight that many. We will all die. No, Taiho said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. You will not die. I will make sure of that. He turned to Yuna and spoke rapidly in Korean. There is only one corridor leading from the cargo bay to this room. It passes through a narrow section near the engine room. If someone holds that point, the pirates cannot reach the hostages. Yuna understood immediately. Her face went still. You want to hold the corridor alone? Yes, that is suicide. Maybe, but it gives you time to get the hostages out. He checked his rifle, then looked at her with eyes that held no fear, no doubt, no hesitation. You know I can do this. You have seen what I can do. Yuna wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him he was crazy, that there had to be another way. But she had served with Park Taiho for 3 years. She knew that once he made a decision, nothing in the galaxy could change his mind. How much time do you need? He asked. She calculated quickly. 47 hostages, some injured. The distance to the cargo bay. The condition of the damaged shuttle. 8 minutes. Maybe 10. Taiho nodded. I will give you 20. Just to be safe. Before she could respond, he was already moving toward the door. He paused at the entrance and looked back at Sorel. Guide them out. Keep them safe. Sorel's voice was barely a whisper. I looked into your mind when you decided this. You are not afraid at all. Why? Taiho considered the question for a moment. Fear is for people who have something to lose. Right now, the only thing I could lose is this mission, and I do not plan to lose." Then he was gone, running down the corridor toward the sound of approaching enemies. The narrow section he had chosen was perfect. The corridor here was barely wide enough for two beings to walk side by side. Metal pipes and machinery lined the walls. A single soldier, properly positioned, could hold this ground against many. Tae-ho took his position behind a piece of jutting machinery that gave him cover. He checked his rifle, his sidearm, his knife. He took a deep breath and waited. He did not have to wait long. The first pirates came around the corner at a run. There were 3 of them, large, brutal creatures with scarred faces and weapons that glowed with deadly energy. They saw Tae-ho and raised their guns. He shot the first one before they could fire. The second fell a moment later. The third managed to get off a single shot that burned a hole in the wall. Before Tae-ho's bullet found him, more pirates poured around the corner. 4, then 6. Then 10. Tae-ho fired and fired and fired. His hands were steady. His aim was true. Bodies fell and piled up in the narrow corridor, creating obstacles that slowed the ones behind. But there were 2. A plasma bolt got through his cover and struck his left shoulder. The pain was incredible, like fire and ice and lightning all at once. Tae-ho grunted but did not stop shooting. He shifted his rifle to his right hand and kept firing. 5 minutes passed. 10 pirates were down. A massive pirate, bigger than any of the others, charged through the bodies of his fallen comrades. He carried a blade that glowed with energy. Tae-ho shot him twice in the chest, but the pirate kept coming. The blade slashed across Tae-ho's ribs, cutting through his armor and into flesh. Tae-ho jammed his pistol against the pirate's throat and pulled the trigger. 10 minutes passed. 20 pirates were down. His rifle was empty. His pistol was almost empty. Blood ran down his side and dripped onto the floor. His left arm hung almost useless, the shoulder wound pumping blood with every heartbeat. A concussive grenade landed near his feet. He kicked it away, but could not get clear before it exploded. The blast threw him against the wall. His ears rang. His vision blurred. He got back up. The pirates could not believe what they were seeing. They had fought many species in their years of crime. They knew how beings died. They knew what pain did to a body. This human should have fallen long ago. This human should be dead, but the human kept standing, kept fighting, kept killing. 15 minutes passed. Tae-ho's pistol was empty. He drew his knife, a simple blade, nothing special, just sharp steel. When the next pirate rushed at him, he moved inside the enemy's guard and drove the knife into his throat. The knife got stuck. He left it and grabbed the dead pirate's weapon. 18 minutes passed. The pirates had stopped coming. Not because they were all dead. There were still some left alive, but because they were afraid. They stood at the end of the corridor, looking at the piles of bodies, looking at the blood-soaked humans standing among them, and they would not move forward. Tae-ho stood swaying on his feet. He had taken a plasma burn, a blade wound, and a concussive blast. He had lost enough blood to kill most beings. His body was screaming at him to fall, to sleep, to die. He did not listen. "Come on," he growled at the pirates. His voice was weak, but his eyes burned like stars. "I am still standing. I am not finished. Come and finish it." None of them moved. Then he heard footsteps behind him, familiar footsteps. He turned his head, which took more effort than anything he had ever done in his life. Yuna was running toward him with Gorath limping behind. Behind them, he could see the last of the hostages disappearing into the cargo bay. "Extraction is ready," Yuna said, her voice breaking. "The hostages are on the shuttle. We are leaving now. Good." Tae-ho tried to take a step toward her. His legs finally betrayed him. He fell forward. Yuna caught him before he hit the ground. He was heavier than he looked, dense with muscle, but she did not let him drop. "I told you," she whispered, tears running down her face. "I told you this was suicide." "Not suicide," he mumbled. "Mission complete. Hostages safe. That is all that matters. You matter too, you idiot." Gorath grabbed Taiho's other side, taking some of the weight. Together, they dragged him back toward the shuttle. The surviving pirates did not follow. They just watched the humans leave, and none of them said a word. In the shuttle, Instructor Vel stared at Taiho's broken body with something that might have been horror. "He should be dead," the Drow said quietly. "By every biological standard I know, he should be dead." "He does not believe in biological standards," Yuna replied. She strapped herself in next to Taiho as the shuttle lifted off. His eyes were closed, but he was still breathing barely, but still breathing. 80 minutes, she said to him, even though she was not sure he could hear. "You held that corridor for 18 minutes against more than 30 enemies. That is impossible. That should not have happened." His lips moved. She leaned closer to hear. "You said you needed 8 minutes. I promised 20. He coughed, and blood appeared on his lips. "I keep my promises." Then he passed out, and Yuna held his hand all the way back to the academy. The instructor told him to relax. He did 100 more push-ups part 5. The Legend Park Taiho woke in the academy's medical bay with no idea how much time had passed. The ceiling above him was white. Machines beeped softly beside his bed. His whole body felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. He tried to move his left arm. It responded, barely. He tried to sit up. Pain exploded through his ribs and he fell back with a groan. "Do not move," a voice said. "You have been unconscious for 3 days. Your body needs rest." Taiho turned his head and saw Admiral Torek standing at the foot of his bed. The old Droth looked tired, his stone face marked with lines that had not been there a week ago. "The hostages?" Taiho asked. His voice was rough, barely louder than a whisper. "Safe, all 47. Not a single casualty among the people we were trying to save." Torek paused. "The cadets who went with you are calling it the miracle of Harmony's grace. The story has spread. Across the entire station. Across the sector, actually." Taiho closed his eyes. "Good. That is good. Good?" Torek stepped closer, his heavy footsteps making the medical equipment rattle. "Cadet Park, you should be dead. The doctors have told me at least 10 different reasons why your heart should have stopped. The plasma burn to your shoulder alone should have sent you into shock. The blood loss should have killed you twice over. The concussive blast caused damage to your internal organs that should have been fatal. But it was not fatal. No, it was not. And that is what I cannot understand." Torek lowered himself into a chair beside the bed. For such a large being, he suddenly looked very small. "I have commanded soldiers for 40 years. I have seen brave warriors from 100 different species. I thought I understood what courage was, what sacrifice was." He shook his head slowly. "I was wrong." Taiho did not respond. He was too tired to explain. Too tired to talk about Jingxin or willpower or any of the concepts that seemed so simple to him and so impossible to everyone else. Torek continued. "The pirates we captured are in our prison now. They will not stop talking. Not about the mission, not about our tactics, about you. They are terrified. They keep asking what we sent after them. They say it was not a soldier. They say it was a demon. I am not a demon. I know. You are something stranger than a demon." Torek leaned forward. "I asked Instructor Vel to explain human physiology to me. He could not. Your muscles should have failed after the first 10 minutes of that fight. Your body should have gone into shock from the plasma burn. You should have lost consciousness from blood loss, long before the 18-minute mark. He paused, his stone eyes searching Taiho's face. "What are you, Cadet Park? What are humans?" Taiho thought about the question for a long time. He thought about Korea, about the mountains where he had trained, about the soldiers who had served beside him. He thought about his mother, who had worked 2 jobs to feed him after his father died. He thought about his commander, who had taught him that the body was just a tool, and the mind was the only thing that mattered. "I am just a soldier," he said finally. "I was given an order. Hold the line." So I held it. The order was to buy time for extraction. You needed 8 minutes. You held for 18. I was not sure the job was done. Torek was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he did something that shocked Taiho more than anything else that had happened. The Admiral, the commander of the entire academy, a warrior who had fought in a dozen wars, stood up and bowed. Not a small nod, but a deep bow in the human fashion. "I did not understand humans when you first arrived," Torek said. "I looked at your soft bodies and your short lifespans, and I thought you were lesser beings. I thought you would struggle to keep up with stronger species." He straightened and met Taiho's eyes. "I was wrong. You are not lesser. You are simply different. Where other species build strong bodies, you have built something else. Strong minds, unbreakable wills, the ability to ignore what your body tells you and keep pushing past every limit." Torek paused. "I am going to recommend that humanity be elevated to full partnership status in the coalition. Not because of your technology or your resources, but because of what I saw in that corridor. Because of what you are capable of when pushed." "That is not necessary, Admiral. I was just doing my job. That is exactly why it is necessary." Torek turned to leave, then stopped at the door. "The doctors say you will recover fully in 6 weeks. Most species would need 6 months for those injuries. Some would never recover at all." He looked back at the young man lying in the hospital bed, wrapped in bandages, hooked to machines designed for beings twice his size. "Get some rest. Cadet Park, that is an order. And this time, I expect you to follow it." For the first time in 3 days, Taiho smiled. "I will try, Admiral." Torek shook his head and walked out, muttering something about impossible humans. Years passed. The story of the miracle of Harmony's grace became legend throughout the academy. Cadets spoke of Pog Taiho in quiet voices, as if saying his name too loudly might summon him from the shadows. They called him the instructor's ghost, the man who was told to relax and chose to keep pushing. The man who held a corridor against impossible odds, because giving up simply was not in his nature. When new human cadets arrived at the academy, other species watched them carefully. They watched them run when no one told them to. They watched them train past exhaustion. They watched them smile through pain that would break other beings. And they remembered. Some of the older instructors kept copies of Admiral Torek's original report. The conclusion was read at the beginning of every new training cycle. Do not mistake human kindness for human weakness. They are the galaxy's most social species, the most cooperative, the most empathetic. They cry at sad stories and laugh at simple jokes and care deeply about beings they have never met, but when pushed, when their people are threatened, when innocent lives are at stake, they become something else entirely. Something that does not stop. Something that does not yield. Something that, when told to relax, does 100 more push-ups instead. I recommend we never give them a reason to turn that persistence against us. Because I have seen what happens when a human decides something must be done. They do not stop until it is finished. They do not stop for pain. They do not stop for fear. They do not stop for death itself. They simply do not stop. Taiho eventually became an instructor himself. He trained hundreds of cadets from dozens of species, teaching them not just how to fight, but how to find the fire inside themselves that would burn long after their bodies wanted to quit. On his first day as a teacher, a young Velani cadet asked him a question. "Instructor Park, is it true what they say about you? That you held a corridor alone against 30 enemies?" Taiho looked at the young cadet, eager, nervous, desperate to prove himself. He remembered being that young once, a lifetime ago. "The stories are exaggerated," he said calmly. "I counted only 27 enemies. And I was not truly alone. My team was counting on me. The hostages were counting on me. When you have something worth fighting for, you are never alone." The cadet hesitated. "But how did you do it? How did you keep fighting when you should have died?" Taiho was quiet for a moment. Outside the window, he could see the stars, millions of them, stretching out into forever. Somewhere out there, other humans were serving on other ships, protecting other lives, pushing past other limits. "I did it the same way I do everything," he said finally. "One push-up at a time. One step at a time. One breath at a time. The secret is simple. When your body says stop, you say no. When your mind says quit, you say not yet. When the universe itself says impossible, you say watch me." He turned to face the class. All those young faces from all those different worlds, and for just a moment, they saw something ancient and unstoppable burning behind his eyes. "Now," Instructor Park Taiho said, "give me 100 push-ups. And when you reach 100, he smiled. Do 100 more. The end."